buzz around the Los Angeles Dodgers right now isn't just about what's happening on the field, but about a decision that caught a lot of people off guard before the season even began. And when you really stop to think about it, it raises a bigger question that goes way beyond just one player. How does someone perform at such a high level and still not make the opening day roster? That's exactly the situation surrounding Hye-Sung Kim. If you were watching closely during spring training, you saw a player who looked sharp, confident, and completely in rhythm. At the plate, he was producing at an elite level, consistently finding ways to get on base and making solid contact. On top of that, his speed was impossible to ignore. Every time he reached base, there was this immediate sense of pressure on the defense, like something could happen at any moment. It's not by accident that his nickname highlights that explosiveness, because once he gets moving, he becomes a real problem. And yet, despite all of that, he's not part of the opening day group. That's where things start to get interesting, because if you just look at the numbers on the surface, the decision doesn't seem to add up. Kim was hitting well over .400 during spring action, showing consistency that most players would dream of heading into the season. Meanwhile, Alex Freeland, the player who ends up getting that opportunity, didn't exactly light things up in the same way when it comes to batting average. But this is where the Dodgers' philosophy comes into play, and it's something that can be frustrating if you're just focused on results. For this organization, what happens during spring training doesn't always carry the weight people think it does. The context matters. The level of competition matters. And more importantly, the process behind each at-bat matters a lot more than the final outcome. Freeland, even without eye-catching numbers, has been doing something the Dodgers value heavily, which is getting on base. Drawing walks, extending at-bats, showing discipline at the plate. Those are the kinds of traits that don't always jump off the stat sheet in the most obvious way, but internally, they carry a lot of importance. It's not just about whether a player gets a hit, it's about how that plate appearance unfolds and what it says about his approach against higher-level pitching. At the same time, there's another layer to this decision that makes it even more strategic. The Dodgers feel like they already have a clear understanding of what Kim brings at the major league level. They've seen enough to have a solid idea of his strengths, his tendencies, and what he can contribute over a full season. With Freeland, that certainty just isn't there yet. And when you're dealing with a roster that's already packed with talent, sometimes the biggest priority becomes answering those unknowns. So instead of simply rewarding the hottest player in spring training, the Dodgers are choosing to invest in information. They want to see Freeland in real major league situations, facing pitchers who are competing at the highest level in games that actually count, because that's the only way to truly evaluate whether he can be part of the long-term picture. There's also a practical side to all of this that can't be ignored. At the major league level, playing time is limited, especially on a team as deep as this one. For a player like Kim, who is still adjusting and developing, not getting consistent at-bats could actually slow down his progress. Down in AAA, he's going to have the chance to play every single day, move around different positions, and continue building his game without interruption. And that's a key detail that often gets lost in the emotional reaction to a move like this. Because from the outside, it feels like a setback. It feels like a player did everything right and still didn't get rewarded. But from the team's perspective, it's about putting each player in the best possible environment for their development at that specific moment. Meanwhile, for Freeland, this is a completely different kind of opportunity. This is about stepping into the big leagues and proving that he belongs. The expectations aren't that he suddenly becomes a superstar overnight, but if he shows he can compete, if he finds a way to produce even in limited chances, the team will find ways to keep him involved. And that's the reality of how things work at this level. If you hit, if you perform, you create your own space. Roles can change quickly, especially early in the season when teams are still figuring out what they truly have. One hot stretch can completely shift the conversation, just like a cold stretch can close doors just as fast. At the end of the day, this decision says a lot about how the Dodgers operate. They're not reacting to small sample sizes or getting caught up in short-term performances. They're thinking several steps ahead, balancing what they already know with what they still need to learn. And even though it might not sit well with everyone right now, especially considering how well Kim played. This is exactly the kind of calculated move that has defined this organization for years. What really fuels the intensity of this situation is the reaction from the fans, because this wasn't one of those quiet roster decisions that slips by unnoticed. The moment the news came out, it sparked a wave of frustration that spread fast, especially among those who had been closely watching Hye-Sung Kim throughout the spring. And honestly, you can understand where that emotion is coming from, because from a purely visual standpoint, it felt like he had earned his spot. There's something powerful about what fans see with their own eyes. When you watch a player consistently making contact, getting on base, creating chaos with speed, and playing solid defense, it builds a sense of trust. It creates this belief that what you're seeing should translate directly into opportunity. So when that opportunity doesn't come, it almost feels like something doesn't add up, like the process behind the decision is disconnected from the reality on the field. A big part of that frustration also comes from timing. During the regular season, not every fan has the chance to watch every game live, especially when games are played across different time zones. But spring training offers a window where more people are tuned in, paying attention, evaluating players for themselves. And during that window, Kim stood out. He wasn't just good, he was noticeable in a way that sticks with you. So when a player like that gets sent down, it creates a disconnect between expectation and outcome. Fans start asking questions, and not just simple ones. They start wondering if performance truly matters, or if there are other factors at play that aren't as visible. That's where debates begin, especially when you compare him to someone like Alex Freeland, whose numbers don't immediately jump off the page in the same way. In Kim's case, the reality is that his path to playing time at the major league level right now would have been limited. Even if he made the roster, he wouldn't be getting consistent opportunities. He would be moving in and out of the lineup, trying to stay sharp without regular at-bats, which is one of the toughest things for any player trying to establish himself. That kind of role can slow development, especially for someone still adapting to the league. Down in AAA, the situation flips completely. Instead of waiting for chances, he becomes the focal point. He gets to play every day, take regular at-bats, refine his approach, and continue building confidence. He can move across different positions, expand his versatility, and stay in a rhythm that simply isn't possible when you're at the end of a crowded major league bench. At the same time, the door isn't closed. Not even close. If anything, it feels more like a pause than a rejection. The nature of a long baseball season almost guarantees that opportunities will open up. Injuries happen, slumps happen, adjustments are constantly being made. And when that moment comes, the team is going to look for someone who is ready, someone who has been playing consistently and staying sharp. That's why there's a strong sense that Kim's return isn't a matter of if, but when. It could happen sooner than people expect. Early in the season, rosters are fluid, and a single change can create a ripple effect that opens up space. If he continues performing and building on what he showed in the spring, it's going to be very hard to keep him out for long. Meanwhile, all eyes will be on Freeland, because now the spotlight shifts to him. This is his opportunity to answer the exact question the Dodgers are trying to figure out. Can he handle major league pitching? Can he turn those disciplined at-bats into real production? And more importantly, can he prove that he belongs in a role that, at least for now, came at the expense of a player who looked ready? And that's where the pressure comes in, even if it's not openly stated. Because every game, every at-bat is going to be evaluated not just on its own, but in comparison to what Kim was doing. That's the reality of competition at this level. When one player gets an opportunity over another, the comparison becomes unavoidable. Still, from the Dodgers' perspective, this is exactly the kind of situation they want. Depth, competition, and multiple options they believe in. It's a luxury that not every team has, and it allows them to make decisions that are focused on long-term success rather than short-term reactions. But for the fans watching all of this unfold, the emotions are real, the questions are valid, and the debate is far from over. Because as the season begins and the results start to come in, every performance is going to add another layer to this story, and every moment on the field is going to bring them closer to an answer that right now still feels wide open. And as the games start to count for real, the spotlight naturally intensifies, especially on those borderline roster decisions that didn't sit well with a large portion of the fan base. Every time Freeland steps into the batter's box, there's going to be an extra layer of attention, not just on what he does, but on what that means in the context of the decision that was made. It's not just about performance anymore, it's about justification. At the same time, there's an internal confidence within the organization that doesn't always translate to the outside world. The Dodgers have built a reputation for trusting their system, trusting their evaluations, and sticking to their process even when it's unpopular. That confidence comes from years of success making these exact types of calls, where the logic might not be obvious in the moment, but reveals itself over time. For Kim, this stretch becomes incredibly important in a different way. It's no longer about proving he can dominate in short bursts, because he's already shown that. Now it's about consistency over a longer period, about continuing to refine his game without letting frustration creep in. That mental side of things can be just as challenging as anything that happens on the field, especially when you feel like you were right on the edge of something bigger. There's also the reality that players in his position often use moments like this as fuel. Being sent down after performing well can either slow someone down or push them to another level entirely. And based on what we've already seen from him, there's a strong case to be made that this could sharpen his focus even more, making him even more dangerous when his next opportunity comes. Meanwhile, the roster itself remains fluid, even if it doesn't feel that way on opening day. What looks like a firm decision now can change quickly depending on how things unfold. A couple of injuries, a shift in performance, or even strategic adjustments can open doors that didn't seem available just days before. That unpredictability is part of what defines a long baseball season. And that's why this story feels far from finished. It's evolving in real time, shaped by every at-bat, every inning, and every decision that follows. The tension between immediate performance and long-term planning isn't going anywhere. And as both Kim and Freeland continue on their respective paths, the outcome of this decision will slowly start to reveal itself in a way that no spring training stat line ever could. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. There's a growing sense around Los Angeles Dodgers camp that the roster is all but settled, with only a single, tantalizing vacancy left to define the final shape of a team already loaded with expectations. Insiders suggest that the front office has quietly moved into its final phase of evaluation, narrowing down internal options while keeping a watchful eye on potential late-market opportunities. The competition for that last spot has, according to whispers, created a subtle but unmistakable tension behind the scenes. Coaches are said to be weighing not just raw performance, but clubhouse chemistry, versatility, and long-term upside. It's the kind of decision that rarely makes headlines outright, yet often proves decisive over the course of a long season. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.